Hey people, you are listening to P&A Radio. We are two friends having real conversations about psychology, mindset, business, geopolitics, basically everything that shapes how we think and live. One of us is right here, which is me. The other guy, total mystery. You will hear him but never see him. If you are someone who is serious about transformation, growing, and thinking deeper, stay with us and let's get started.
Pull up that Sadhguru video that you shared earlier with me.
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, play this.
Okay. Are you able to see this? Yeah.
So if you're focused on the mountain, you will not even focus on the foothills. See, we've had this discussion before about how to control your mind, right? We hear it everywhere. Read it in the Bhagavad Gita. You, in other ways, you read it from Western philosophers also, like how to control the state of mind, keep it under your control, shit like that. While doing research about what scientific literature there is regarding how to control your state of mind, I thought this video and that paper together were interesting. So what Sadhguru is basically saying here is that if you focus on the negative, like um, I will not think about something.
Yeah.
Now, that will inevitably shine or bring awareness on that thought that you don't want to think, which ironically starts filling up your mind, right? It's what he's saying is, if you don't want to think about something, let's say X, then what you're supposed to do is focus on Y, right? When you focus on Y, you inevitably don't think about X. Right? He's saying if you keep thinking about, oh, I will not think about X, I will not think about X, you're basically in other ways thinking about X, right? You're thinking
Yeah.
about those negative.
Yeah.
So I
Got
thought this was interesting. So I came across this scientific paper by Wegner called
so
"Ironic Process of the Mind."
like I'll add on to this like what you have said, like your mind doesn't know the difference between good or bad. If I say to you, don't think
Mm,
of an red elephant, guess what? You're thinking of an red elephant. They don't exist in your mind. They don't doesn't
right.
exist in your mind. So we should only ask our mind like what we really want. You're saying.
So uh, subtraction, like he said, right? Subtraction. What he means is that you cannot force any thought out of your mind. Like, you cannot forcefully remove a thought, because
Yes.
to remove a thought, you're basically shining light on it. Inevitably, it comes into your focus. It comes into your awareness or consciousness or whatever you want to call it. It suddenly becomes active in your mind. So,
Yes.
by the irony is inbuilt in the process, where that your attempt at removing it in turn amplifies it in the fundamental, that is the fundamental understanding that he is talking about. So this is relevant, I would say, in many cases, like not just in particular instances or moments, right? Even in long term, I see this kind of lapses every day. People trying to quit smoking, drinking, whatever,
Yeah.
right? People who are trying to manage negative emotions or
Negative
negative
thought
thoughts,
loops. Yeah.
hot loops. I see people falling into this trap all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm the prime example
Right. Yeah,
for that thing,
you've
for that
discussed
shit.
this before. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
like
know, like,
I struggle a lot with this thing, but when I listen to this video, the point I extracted is that if I don't want anything coming in my head, I just want to think the opposite.
right. So some sort of a meditative process like that, you should get into those things
Yeah.
in that moment if you want to avoid that anxiety attack or something like that. The solution is to go into some sort of deep breath. See, why is that? How does that fit in to the initial definition, right? So how it works is when you're meditating, dhyana, what we call dhyana, what you're doing, you're sitting somewhere and you're uh, promptly preparing to get out of that flight or fight mode, right? You're
Yes. Yes.
relaxing, you're
Yes.
taking deeper breaths, you're
Yes.
doing everything opposite of what a panic situation looks like in your body,
Yes.
a panic response in your body, where the heartbeat is high, you're sweating,
Sweating,
your
legs are
erratic
trembling.
movements,
Yeah.
right? You're doing the opposite of all those things. And the most important, when it comes to this aspect, the most important thing that you're doing is you're focusing your attention on your breath. That's what we do. Or
Yes.
you might be chanting some Om Namah Shivaya or
Mantras. Yeah.
something like that, mantras. You can whatever it is, your attention is no longer on that thing that is causing you anxiety.
Yes, that's the main thing. Yeah.
That's the main thing.
The
It's like a
attention.
distraction. Yes, the awareness is on something else, and that is why going into a small meditative process while you are having these thought loops brings you out of the even the paper that I'm about to show you. They
Okay.
also talk about these things, where they mention that these meditative processes
Huh.
have shown considerable, like what do you say, scientific proof. They show it where it helps you divert your mind away from those loops, or
Yeah.
away from the content that is causing that loop, right? So it makes a lot of sense. Like in the end, Sadhguru says, right, when your focus is on the mountain peak, you are naturally not going to focus on the,
Obstacles you
stumbling
find.
blocks,
Yeah.
right, on the way,
On the
right?
way. Yeah. Yeah.
Obstacles on
Yeah.
the way, you will naturally not find it. So it makes a lot of sense. In your dhyana, your attention, you're completely removing it from everything else and focusing it on your breath, right? That removes that flight or fight response that you said right earlier.
Yeah.
That state of mind is through meditation, breath work. That's one way of doing it.
Got it. Now, like, can we like share the paper? You
So
have to share it, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. I can.
yeah, so this one is the paper,
Uh.
right? So ironic processes of mental control. So Daniel M. Wegner, published in 1994. So first we'll go through the synopsis, right? It will summarize the whole paper, and we'll go
Okay.
through the highlights of it that are relevant for this discussion. A theory of ironic processes of mental control is proposed to account for the intentional and counter-intentional effects
Effects.
that results from efforts at self-control of mental states. So, what he is proposing is that his mental model, his or a model of mental control, ironic process, it will explain how intentional, meaning the intended effects that you wanted to happen, and counter-intentional and opposite of those effects, meaning let's say you wanted to create happy state of mind, that would be what you would call intentional consequences or intentional
No
effects.
effects. Yeah.
Counter intentional would be opposite of happy, that is sad effects resulting from the efforts at self control of mental states. Now you trying to take control of your mind and imposing a happy state resulting in sad state. Now this is something people observe, right? um,
Yeah. Yeah.
for example, a couple of example comes to my mind, like when you are on a diet or something like that, you start thinking, your whole day you start thinking, well, I should not eat this, I should not eat that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and your craving just keeps on increasing. you know on
Yes.
the day when when you're thinking about not eating is the day when you eat a lot. you end
Yes.
up you end up breaking all the diets. Your craving just increases, right? Or something like
This is a good
you start,
example.
right, and for example, you start thinking about, look, I should not have a anxiety attack, a panic attack, or
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah.
You start you
That's
start
when
worrying
I
about it.
I get that feeling of impending doom. Like
Right.
it's an unexplainable feeling. You are like having panic attack. You are like very shaky. I mean, you
Right.
get lightheadedness.
Yes.
Fuck, it's weird.
Right. So you inevitably cause it, right? When you try, if you
Yeah.
start thinking, I should not get an attack, I should not get an attack,
Yes.
you will end up
Yes.
getting an attack.
Yes.
So what he's saying is that his process, his ironic process of mental control model explains why that happens.
Hmm. Can
That's
you,
what he's saying.
bro? Like, can you a little bit zoom it
Oh, sure.
and hide the left part? Like, you can click on that three arrows.
Can you see now?
Yeah, it's now better.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll
it's
go
better.
through the
Hmm.
synopsis. What he's saying is, when you consciously you
Hmm.
decide, okay, now I'm going to try to control the state of my mind. You're intentionally trying to, let's say now you're thinking, let me make my mind state of mind happy. That is your attempt at trying to control the mental state, correct?
Yeah, mind mental
Mental
state. Yeah.
state. So at that moment, when you're consciously putting in an effort to control it,
Hmm.
two processes get triggered.
Okay.
Okay, so an operating process that promotes intended change by searching for mental contents consistent with the intended state. That is
Hmm.
one process. So
Okay.
he calls it an operating process. Um,
Hmm.
one thing to note is it is obviously a conscious process because you are you are imposing it. Right? It
Hmm.
gets triggered because you are trying to impose it, a particular state of mind. It gets triggered. So one operating process, it's a conscious process. What it does is it's now let's say you're thinking, let me make my mind mental state happy. It starts searching for content that makes you happy.
Hmm.
Very right in your whatever. It searches for that content that makes you happy. That is what the operating process does. And then the most important part, I would say,
Hmm.
a monitoring process that tests whether the operating process is needed by searching for mental contents inconsistent with the intended states. So what does that mean? He's saying unconsciously. This is not a conscious process. Okay,
Okay.
unconscious mind starts a monitoring process. He calls
Hmm.
it an ironic monitoring process. Uh, which will constantly search for proof
Hmm.
whether you are actually deviating from a happy state. So you're let's put all of this together for now. You are thinking, let me make my mental state happy,
Hmm.
and you are intentionally trying it. So what happens is an operating process gets launched. It searches for content that makes you happy, correct?
Yes.
Now subconsciously what happens along with that is
Hmm.
a monitoring process gets launched, which is searching for proof whether
Hmm.
whether you're deviating from a happy state or not. The
Hmm.
point of it, what is the point of doing that? The point is what that mental monitoring process will do is, if it gets proof, okay, now sad, let's say happy, opposite of happy is sad,
Hmm.
for the sake of
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
situation. So if it detects any sort of proof of sad contact or something like that, content or something like that, right?
Huh.
So it immediately reimposes the operating process.
Oh. Yeah.
So what it will do is it will trigger the operating process, ask it to again search for content that makes you happy, so that the happy state remains. That is the intention of it. The intention of B is to maintain A. That's it. So inevitably, what does it do? Inevitably, it keeps itself sensitive, or it makes the mind sensitive to what? To proof opposite of intended state, right? So the opposite of intended state in our example would be
Sad. Hmm.
sadness.
Hmm.
Now it makes your mind sensitive to sad thoughts and sad content, so
Hmm.
that it can detect those things, right? Now
Yeah.
you could ask, well, now how why is it not seeping into your awareness, right? Why are the sad thoughts not suddenly getting awareness, or
Hmm.
coming into your consciousness or something like that? That is because in his model he's saying, in so I will take you further. Actually, we will go to that later. Okay, we'll just
Okay.
some things I've highlighted. Let's go through this. Ironic process theory holds that the processes that undermine the intentional control of mental states are inherent in the very exercise of such
Such
control.
control.
Meaning, this phenomenon of you trying something and it ending up being something opposite of what you tried
Yeah,
is inherent in that process.
that's exactly what happens,
Right.
bro. Literally, I know how it works. Like,
Right.
whenever I'm going outside, I'll be like, oh, I don't want my anxiety to. And guess what happens? It does.
Right. You suddenly start feeling a little
Panicking,
anxious.
yeah,
Yeah.
anxious.
Suddenly you start thinking, what if this happens? What if that happens? And suddenly,
Yes,
right.
it's the
Exactly. You
thing.
know, going back to that original video of Sadhguru, he mentions, right?
Yeah.
If you had never taken that vow of, I will
Hmm.
not think about a monkey, you would have never
Hmm.
thought about a monkey. But because
Yes,
you took that vow,
exactly.
right? Because you took that vow,
Yeah.
in that vow, it is inbuilt that you will
Hmm.
think about a monkey. That is what this theory is outlining,
So
right?
let's deep dive into these papers and learn how we can not take that vow in the
Yes.
first place.
So what is this? What does he say? So when, but coming to like what the purpose of you imposing that intended state, right? At the
Hmm.
end of the day, that is how we work, right? We think, okay, let me make my mental state into a particular thing, and we impose that particular thing. It works. Like
Hmm.
most of the time, it works. Like in the morning, right? When you say, it's not like every time you think, oh, let me not have a panic attack or something, or let me quit drink. Let's take an example of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the morning, if he says, I will never drink again, okay,
Oh
right,
God.
I
Yeah.
will never drink. So he will think about it, and he is successful in the morning. He's
Yes.
not immediately getting that craving to go to a bar and drink.
Yeah.
So obviously, when he says, I don't want to drink anymore, he's trying to control his mental state. He's
Hmm.
imposing that, he's putting that effort,
Hmm.
right? So at that point, it did not trigger any craving.
Yes.
Like that mental model where he says that the possibility of getting an ironic effect
Hmm.
because of your attempt at controlling your mental state is not true all the time, right? When is it true? So what differentiates between you being able to actually control your mind and you being able to not actually control your mind? So when does it actually reverse, right? When does the reverse effect come?
Hmm.
So he says that the central variable, dividing the successful control from having an ironic effect is the availability of mental capacity.
Capacity.
What he suggests is, when you have adequate mental capacity, adequate willpower, you are not stressed in the sense that your cortisol levels are under control. Your let's say you. That's why I took the example of early morning. Right,
Hmm.
an alcoholic is thinking, I will stop drinking.
Yeah.
Now his mental capacity is at its fullest because he just woke up from sleep. He's recharged. He's at its peak of that for that day. Right. That is what he's talking about. When you're relaxed, when you're not under stress, when your willpower is at its peak, when your internal chemistry is pleasant, like the Sadhguru's language, you will have a successful control. When you try to control, it will become successful.
Okay.
Now, you will get the ironic effects when you try to control your mind when there is not adequate mental capacity. That's what he says. Now, how does this work in the model is,
Hmm.
what he's saying is, when you are at your peak, when your capacity is highest, what happens is, I mentioned that the first process A, the operating process, is a conscious process, if you remember. And the
Yes.
process
Yes.
B, the monitoring process, is the
Un-
subconscious process,
yes.
right? Subconscious. It's not an unconscious process, it's a subconscious
Subconscious.
process.
Yes.
Process A will dominate process B when you are at your peak or when you are not stressed.
Process A dominates process B when you are at peak. Yeah.
Yeah, so all the attention will be on your process A. Your
Hmm.
subconscious is subconscious. It is not in your consciousness, correct?
Yeah.
It is not seeped in. That negative thoughts and all have not seeped into your consciousness. They are not in your awareness. They have not yet filled your brain. Why? Because the operating process is trying to impose something else, right? It is currently engaged in imposing a happy state.
Happy state. Yes.
In that process, it is taking up all your mind.
Hmm.
So it is dominating over process B. It is not allowing any sad or whatever things to come into the brain. Correct.
Yes.
And that is why you are able to impose successful control when your mental capacity as it's uh, in its fullest. So his like this theory, this paper suggests that when you are stressed, let's say in the evening, okay, the
Yes,
guy
yes,
in the morning,
absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
the guy, to continue that example, the guy in the morning, mentioned that he doesn't want to drink anymore, and he was successful in it. He goes to work, right? Some
Hmm.
certain bad things happen. His insecurities come up, right? So, things
Some
happen.
thoughts come up. Yeah.
Some thoughts come up. In a day's work, many things happen.
Hmm.
Basically, his negative emotions are now on the verge of getting spilled over into his brain,
Yes.
right? Like they are, they're there, they're just looking at you,
Hmm.
looking at the across the horizon. So what happens is he comes home, he's depleted, his willpower is depleted, he's a little bit erratic, he's a little bit stressed, his mental capacity is not
To
what
the
you would call
point. Yeah.
optimal.
To the capacity.
Yeah,
Hmm.
at this point, right? Now if he mentions even accidentally mentions, I will not drink anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Now if he starts thinking about, oh, I should not drink, or things like that about
Hmm.
drinking,
Yeah.
what happens is, again the same process starts where the operating system imposes his ideals about why he should stop drinking, right?
Hmm.
There is a uh, there is an argument in his mind,
Hmm.
telling him why he should not drink.
Hmm.
Now he will recall that argument again and again,
It
trying to
goes
impose
it
that
goes
control.
to monitoring process and then again to operating process, monitoring, operating.
Yes, so the both the process together are launched.
Yeah.
Now the monitoring process is also looking at signs, like why he should be drinking, right? If it is looking out for those signs,
Fuck.
excuses for drinking, is it coming up or not? It is searching
Yeah.
for those signs. Is he making any excuse for drinking? Like
Yeah.
is he still on the commitment whether he should not drink or not, whatever, right? It is monitoring for those excuses whether they are coming up or not, because it wants to monitor that.
Yes. Simple acronym I could say here is, if you have seen Tom and Jerry,
Uh-huh.
if Tom is going to do something, there is two minds. One is this devil evil kind of
Right, right,
red kind of mind, and one is like angel
right,
with that ring on his head.
right, right, right,
It says don't do it, it says do it.
right.
Yeah.
So the monitoring process purpose is that it should look out for any content that is going against the intended state. The intended state is that he is thinking I should not drink.
Yeah.
Now, going against is what? He will come up with excuses to drink, right?
Drink.
Oh, this
Yes.
one day or something like that. So the
Let's do
monitoring
it one
process
day. Yeah.
is looking for those thoughts. Oh, where are those excuses? Are they coming up? If they are coming up, I will reimpose the control, right? Subconsciously. The problem is in his state of mind currently, where he is erratic and stressed out. Now, in morning, what happened is the process A, the operating process, suppresses those thoughts because the monitoring process sensitized his mind for those thoughts. Those thoughts are coming up now. What those excuses, right? Those excuses where he's justifying himself for drinking, those thoughts are actually coming up because your monitoring process has made his brain sensitive for those thoughts. But the process A will dominate over it, and it keeps those things thoughts under suppression in the morning.
Yes.
The difference is that now when those thoughts are up again, those excuses, the operating process is not strong enough. It does not have enough capacity or support of mental capacity where it can suppress those things and call it accidentally or whatever. Ironically, those thoughts, the monitoring process that sensitize those, those thoughts, that is looking for those thoughts, they jump into your awareness. Suddenly, those excuses come to his mind. Oh,
Yes.
he will start rationalizing those excuses, right? He'll start thinking, yeah, it's one day is fine, whatever
Yeah.
he's thinking.
I
Tomorrow,
should
from next week, I
I
will
should
stop
drink
drinking.
because of this reason. Yeah.
Right. And he will say, oh, today is fine, I will stop on next Monday, or whatever things that, you know,
Yeah.
whatever things that he has been using for so long, those things get attention. Those things come into awareness, those things come into consciousness, and suddenly he starts getting those cravings, and his willpower is weak, and he will start drinking.
Again that
So,
loop. Yeah.
right. So that is what in other words, that is what Sadhguru said, right? This theory supports that, where Sadhguru said, if you don't think about not thinking about monkey, you will never think about a monkey. But
Yes.
because you started thinking about you started taking that vow, or you
Wow.
started repeating that sentence, I will not think
Think
about a
about
monkey. I'll not
monkey.
think about a monkey. Supported by the right circumstances, as they call it, you know, with the right kind of pitch. those thoughts dominated the negative thoughts, the negative, and he falls into those, you know, cravings. So now what does this paper suggest? Now this paper suggests that the same things like mindfulness techniques work, like positive feature focus works, like taking your attention away from these thoughts help.
Thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, and now that is one of the things that he says, like in the moment, right? Now the major difference I found from this, the solutions given in this paper, to what Sadhguru said. Now let's dissect what Sadhguru said first.
Yeah, okay. So
In
let's deep dive into it. Yeah.
Sadhguru said, when you are focused on the peak of the mountain, you ignore the obstacles along the way.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? That means that when you have a higher purpose, right? When you have a, for me, using the terminology in Bhagavad Gita and everything, and other scriptures as well, when you are focused on your dharma,
Yeah.
when you're focused on your doing your dharma, you naturally ignore these things, these temptations, these small things. Now the way to avoid these negative thoughts is to focus on the positive, right? That is what he's saying. But Sadhguru, he aligns it with, in your whole life, right? If you create a larger purpose, if you like working for dharma,
Yeah.
even if that guy, let's take that example, if that guy was, let's say, thinking about, today what do I need to, what is the that day instantiation of his larger dharma, he has a larger goal, right, to achieve something. Now what does today, like how does that larger goal instantiate itself, like how does it manifest itself into that day? He has to do certain things, right? He will have a schedule. I'll have to do this, do that, so that 5 years from now, I will achieve my goal or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Now, if he had that goal, now he would not have come home, sit here, and think about I will not drink. If you
Yeah.
don't have the time
Yeah.
to think about I will not drink, instead of saying I will not drink, he would have been doing something else,
Something.
right?
And that thought itself doesn't come to his mind.
Now, even if it comes, he suddenly puts it aside and he starts doing what he's doing. He's focused on what he needs to do.
ಸೈಡಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ ನಿಮ್
Right.
ಸೈಡಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ ನಿಮ್
Right.
ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಿರೋದು.
Right. Yes. So, so I found that major difference uh, in what he said and what Sadhguru suggests, where Sadhguru has this long-term kind of a vision, solution, higher purpose. Now, I don't know if these are the terms that he uses, because he only uses metaphor about
Yes.
focusing on the peak of the mountain. But I'm using these terms. These are
Yeah, we
loaded terms that mean many things,
Yes.
but nonetheless, right? So the Wegener's theory, this provides sort of a scientific uh, basis
Process.
of understanding that phenomenon in our, right. So what is it missing, like the scientific paper? I think it's very pragmatic, in the sense that at that moment what you need to do, what works, and what scientific methods work. He mentions those things, but it lacks that aspirational, quality of not falling into this trap over, every day of your life. It lacks that depth.
You are talking about this paper.
And I think that what it lacks when it comes to the solution, right? What it lacks, how to transcend that thing, those things are provided, in that small two-liner metaphor that Sadhguru used.
Yes.
I think that is why I said combining these two things, this makes for a very interesting.
So is there anything that in this paper that we can extract more?
Yeah, that's pretty much about it. I didn't go, I read the paper, but you don't need to go into the scientific, like the paper structures, right? It goes into, gives you empirical evidences of different states of minds and how they are controlled. What about the conditions for irony and all that? I don't think those things are necessary for us, although he does
Yes.
mention at the end about mindfulness being effective and things like that, which we already discussed, right? Yeah, but as far as this paper is concerned, I think it has its utility.
So I think the action steps we could lay out here is we should have something big in our life to do, like big things.
Yeah, like you should have an orientation in your life, I would say, rather than saying big or small. Although we both are limited in our competence in English, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are using it. Even though we mean something deeper, we'll have to use something shallow. I get it. I get your point.
We will
But
learn.
yeah, we are still learners in English.
Yeah,
But trying to induce
we
some
are not.
nuance. We Let me just try and induce some nuance by saying, instead of saying something big, it's like giving an orientation for your life, right? If you have a like if you have a direction in your life, a proper direction or something like that, that metaphor where they say an idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Workshop. Yeah,
Yeah, that thing
I
where,
truly believe that. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
have
So
been there.
yeah, I mean, you should be very I have I know that in our culture there are yogis and these people who talk about doing nothing,
Yes.
right? They don't have any compulsion to do anything, right? They sit there simply doing nothing and they're fine. I get that, but that is not the stage we are in. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. So for us, I would say, uh, having a purpose, having a direction in your life, and an orientation, like a dharma that you are following, in your whole, there's various instantiation of it, like manifestations of that larger goal. Like what, if you have so and so bigger goal, what does that mean for today?
Yes.
What needs to be done today so that it contributes towards that larger goal? That's what I mean when I say instantiations. So those things are there, and if you do those things, you bring a structure to your life, right? If you have some routine, proper routine, and all those things to support you, which will free up your mental capacity to a large extent, and these things keep you healthy, and the healthier you are, it's easier to exert your operating process.
Yeah, we will discuss all about this, like the purpose, the orientation, the mindset, and
Yes.
also so many topics we have to discuss
Yes.
in this project we are doing. We have lot of things to discover and share it with the world. So, people, if you are interested in this kind of raw, purposeful, valuable insights, you get all of this from this videos we are doing. We put in lot of effort, work, hours of research, and also try to bring different perspective into the topic. That's what we are here to do. So yeah, if you
Tag
like.
along.
Okay, I didn't hear
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I said, just if you like it, just tag along.
Yeah, if you
Join
like
our
it,
journey.
subscribe. I think you will be our long-term subscriber for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, regarding, you mentioned, right, or like purpose or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to go there. Like, what do you mean when you say purpose of life? Is it good to even have a purpose of life? Like,
Like how do we approach that? Yeah.
right. Like, there are many pitfalls even there, right? It's a big topic. Like, it's not like a simple question where you say, "Oh, purpose of life,
We'll go
done
in
and dusted."
depth.
So these things we can discuss.
So
Yeah.
we have learned a good topic today.
Yes.
How our mind works. That's it from my side. And bro, you want to say anything
Well, that's it, and see you guys next time.
in the next video? Yeah.
Yes.